Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's wonderful to be here. So a huge congratulations for the 20th anniversary. Fantastic. So a big thank you to the wonderful Sagrera family, to Ricardo, Maria, and my good friend Arturo and his wonderful wife Jimena. And then I'm so excited to be here with my beautiful wife Carla. We've been married for 37 years, and my wonderful son Luke, who's 15 years old. So it's a great honor to be here. So I'm going to be talking today about two things. One is power and one is purpose. But the first thing is power. What am I going to be talking about? The first thing. What am I going to be talking about? What am I going to be talking about? What am I going to be talking about? Power. So power and purpose. And I'm going to be talking about this little code that you can use to find, what's the word? Power from purpose. So purpose in many ways is the same as power. When you're young, it's a really simple method to find your own power. So the method is called the code, and it's how to find purpose and power. Super simple, only takes 15 minutes. And I'm hoping that after my presentation that all of you write your code. 12 lines, every line begins with I will, because it's a way to find what? It's a way to find what? Find your purpose, find your power, and then find your path through life. So our words, as all of you know, have got tremendous power. Power for good, power for evil, power for optimism, power for negativity, power for kindness, power for unkindness. Words have got the power to change the way that we think. Words have got the power to change our mindset, which is a simple way of saying this is how we feel about life. So this is a reflection of what I do when I talk to many companies. I ask them to text me a word that describes how they're feeling, and these words are a reflection of mindset. You can see the negativity associated with the words of many hundreds of thousands of people around the United States. Exhausted, disappointed, uncertain. And what I try to do with this little code method that I'm hoping to share with all of you is change the mindset from what I call a sad mindset, stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection, to what I call the code mindset, commitment, optimism, discipline, engagement, and empathy. So where does this power come from? Where does what come from? Where does what come from? Where does your power come from? Your power comes from purpose. Exactly, that was a good answer. Power comes from purpose. So what is purpose? Purpose is simple. Purpose is power. It enables organizations and individuals to thrive. Purpose is our higher calling. Purpose is something we aspire to. Purpose is a long-term commitment to accomplish aims that are meaningful to us and to the broader world. It's not a goal. Purpose is higher than a goal. So how can you find purpose? I want to tell you a quick story about my path to finding purpose. This is my path, my perspective, no prescription. It is just a perspective. I grew up in a place called Durban, South Africa. My mom was an evacuee from the island of Malta. During the Second World War, she endured 3,600 air raids from the Nazis and the Italians. Eventually, the whole island started to starve. She was evacuated, ended up on the beach in Durban, South Africa, 11,000 miles from here, and she met my dad, who was a bit of a stud. He was a beach boy and a surfer, and his dream was to go and compete in the Olympic Games for swimming. And this is what happened to my dad. From the front page of the local paper, I was lifted clear from the water. It was an ideal day for surfing and for sharks. A Zambezi shark, which is like a great white shark on steroids, came up underneath him and bit him so hard it threw him up into the air, and in one bite nearly bit his arm off and left my dad back in the water to die with the shark swimming around him. Luckily, a brave lifeguard swam out there, rescued my dad, pulled him in, but he was never able to swim again, and his dream of winning an Olympic gold for his country was destroyed. But my dad never lost this great love that he had for surfing, taught me how to swim and surf 100 meters away from where he'd had this terrible shark attack. He used to watch me while I surfed with a pair of binoculars, watching for the sharks. And I like to think that I caught my first wave right out there, and I like to think I was an instant success. I got third in my very, very first surfing competition. There was only 3 of us, but I got my 3rd place. It was a big victory. It was a great victory. 3rd out of 3, thank you very much. So I started to do a little bit better than 3rd out of 3. I went to Hawaii for my bar mitzvah. I'm Jewish. My dad took me to Hawaii. I rode the big waves in Hawaii, came back to South Africa with a lot of confidence, managed to make it into the South African surfing team, and then I started my surfing career. I won my first competition while I was doing my army service. I was a rifleman. When I was 17 years old, it was called the Gunston 500. It became a very big surfing event, and in fact my father had started the event, and then I went on to become a world surfing champion. It was such a cool life. That's a picture of me winning the title. I was on the cover of the surfing magazines. I spent my whole life just in a pair of board shorts. It was a fun way to make a living. But what was wonderful about it is that surfing was a very new sport, and my cousin Michael and I and some young Australian guys, we helped develop a professional surfing tour. So in our own way, we were entrepreneur athletes, and the tour today is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I started my first surfing company, and I called it Instinct when I was 22 years old, and it grew into one of the big surfing companies around the world. I called it Instinct because the best moments in surfing, and in fact, the best moments in sport, happen when you're operating on instinct. And one of the best things about having my own company is that I was able to sponsor other young surfers to realize their dreams. So it wasn't all about me, but it was about helping other people. I sponsored that's a picture of me at the top, and a young surfer called Tom Carroll from Australia at the time. And in 1985, Tom and I were gunning for the world title the whole year. I led the whole year, and then right at the end, Tom Carroll beat me and became a world champion. So it was wonderful to not only create a business, but also help other people. I helped this young Australian also to become a world champion as well while I was competing on the tour. So during the height of my career, this was a different path for me. A friend of mine phoned me up and he said, the famous surfing break of Malibu is one of the most famous surfing breaks in the world, is having a severe environmental problem. And Shaun, I would love you to help. I would love you to use your notoriety, your renown as the #1 surfer in the world to help us solve this environmental problem. So I got involved with the new organization that he was forming, and he called it Surfrider Foundation. And it was an environmental foundation dedicated to preserving and protecting the world's waves, oceans, and beaches. He said, what we really need is we want some help with promoting this new organization, and we need an advertising slogan, and we need a picture of you riding a wave. So I found a nice picture of myself riding a wave, and I wrote those 5 words. I told all of you that words have got what? Words have got great power. And I wrote those 5 simple words, do a good turn today. And for me, that was a fundamental turning point in my life at that time, that I knew that I wanted to be involved with not only winning and economic success, but I wanted to be involved with purpose. I wanted to be involved with a mission beyond just self. So do a good turn today has become really a focus in my life. Not only being successful, but trying to help others realize their dreams and do a good turn by being successful too. So after I retired from the professional tour and sold my company Instinct, my wife Carla and I started another company. We called it Solitude, and we located the company right across the road from one of the most famous surfing beaches in the world, a place called Rincon in Santa Barbara. And a friend of mine phoned me up after a couple of years of operating my business. He said, Shaun, just like Malibu, Rincon is facing a severe environmental challenge. All the homeowners are connected up to septic tanks. When it rains, the effluent from the toilets overflows and it's making the surface sick. I need you to help me solve this problem. He said it's an $8 million problem, and he said, I'm going to give you a $100 budget to solve an $8 million problem. I went, I think you're crazy. There's no way that I can solve an $8 million problem with $100. He said, no, I've got an idea. We're not just going to solve it with $100. We're going to solve it with students, exactly like all of you. We want to use the power of students to solve this big problem. I said, well, what can I do? He said, figure it out. I'm going to bring 100 students to the beach. I'm going to bring the city officials. I'm going to bring the federal officials. I'm going to bring the water board. I want you to inspire the children, and I'm going to bring the media. So I went home and I thought, what can I do to inspire 100 students with $100? And I promise you, what I did next changed my life. And I'm hoping that every single one of you are going to do the same exercise. And I can't promise it's going to change your life, but maybe this little exercise can change your life. So this is what I did. I picked up a sheet of paper and I wrote down 12 lines, every line beginning with I will. I will equals, what's the word with P? I will equals what? I will equals what? I will equals power, because those are two absolutely unequivocal words that mean power. And I wrote down in 15 minutes the 12 fundamental lessons that surfing had taught me about life. Not how to be the best surfer in the world, not how to win the most contests, but about camaraderie, about resilience, about perseverance, about commitment, about power. And I printed up a little card, and I printed up 100 cards. How much do you think it cost me? $100, because that was my budget. And you're involved with Supérate, you're involved with business and budgets and resilience and learning about IT and learning about values. That was my budget. And I printed up 100 cards. How can 100 cards impact anyone's life? How can 100 little cards with 105 words on them create any sort of wave of positivity? Well, I gave the cards out to the kids. The students, exactly like yourselves, loved the cards. The media loved the cards. And we created this groundswell of hope, positivity, and purpose that swept through the community. And ultimately, we solved the environmental problem. We raised a bond for $8 million, and we solved the problem. But the power of the words kept going. And I started printing more and more and more cards until hundreds of thousands of these little cards were getting distributed out into the culture. And then one day, I spoke at an event, and a guy said to me, Shaun, I think this would make a great book. So I thought, well, I've never written a book before. He said, well, I've never written a book either. So we collaborated together, and we wrote my first book, and it was called Surface Code, 12 Simple Lessons for Riding Through Life. And one day I was sitting out in the water at my favorite surfing break, Rincon, which had the environmental problem, and a guy paddled up to me. He said, Shaun, I'm a principal at the local school, a school just like yours, but a little bit smaller. There were only 80 students. He said, I would love you to come to my school to talk about the code and to talk about your book. So I went on down to the school, tiny little school. The media came down and covered it. And I'm talking to the students about the code, and I say, I wrote Surface Code, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will, because I will is power. I said, what about all of you writing your own codes? 15 minutes, 12 lines, write what you want. Write down your future. Find your purpose. Find your power. Find your path. So the kids wrote their codes. I will equals what? I will equals power. So every single kid wrote their code, and the very first line of code I got back from a young student, exactly like you guys and gals, was, I will always be myself. I will always be myself. Words of absolute unequivocal power. And those words were so profound to me because my wife Carla and I had recently lost our beautiful son Matthew to a poor decision about 6 months before. So this young girl was saying, I will be myself. I'm not going to be pushed around. I'm not going to be victimized. I'm not going to be bullied. I will be myself. And the other wonderful words that all those young students wrote about their future path through life. I will not compromise on my morals to fit in with others. I will have fun. I will persevere. I will focus more. Beautiful words of power, purpose, commitment, and in many ways, poetry. All these young students were writing poetry of the soul. So now I go across the world and I empower young people to write their codes. Kids don't only write their codes, sometimes they create these amazing graphics. I'll follow my dreams. I will let my dreams outshine my fears. I will follow my own path. I love this one. I will do no evil. I will bring change to the world. So I encourage all of you students, drop a stone, create a ripple, build a wave. Drop a stone, create a ripple, build a wave, and write your code. 12 lines. Every line begins with I will, because I will equals what? I will equals what? I will equals what? Write your code, find your purpose, find your power, find your path. Thank you very much.